Yesterday we were factoring and canceling. Today we're expanding using the distributive property. They're kind of opposites. So yesterday we might have had something like 8 minus 4 over 4. And we knew we couldn't reduce the 4s, so we factored out a 4. And we changed this to 4 times 2 minus 1. Took a 4 out of each of these. And that helped us to eliminate the 4s. So we were factoring out so that we could reduce, and today we're expanding. We're using the distributive property, and they're really opposites. So today we're starting with that 4 times 2 minus 1, and we're going the other way. We're saying, well, if we distribute this through, we've got 8 minus 4. And you might be asking yourselves, why are we doing opposite things in 2 days? Are we supposed to just stick to one with solving? And the answer is no. Sometimes we need to factor to help us solve a problem, and sometimes we need to expand and use the distributive property to help us to solve a problem. It just depends on the problem. We need both strategies. The good news is today it looks really messy, but it's actually really quite simple. We already know all the rules we need to know. We know that if bases are the same, for example, when we multiply numerator and numerator here, we've got x times x squared times x squared, we can add the exponents. And we like multiplying fractions because we don't need common denominators. So we're going to expand this through here, and it's going to eliminate parentheses for us. That's really its value. We won't see the value today yet, but we'll at least go through the steps and learn how to expand something that looks really messy like this using the distributive property. Again, not too difficult. X squared times x squared is going to give us x to the 4th. And then for our denominators, y squared times y gives us y to the 3rd. Minus x squared times 3y to the 3rd is 3y to the 3rd x squared. Pretty simple. M times y squared is my squared. That's it. I wish it were more complicated than that, but it's not. Just multiply through, eliminate parentheses. Do another one here. M times AXP is MAXP. Z times MK is ZMK. Minus 2 times m to the 4th, p to the 4th times m would be 2m to the 5th, p to the 4th, over, this is like over 1, so z times 1 is z. That is it. Not too difficult. And sometimes we'd have 3 terms. I'll do a simple one. mz again times ax, or a squared x minus z plus b over z. So you could have 3 terms in here. Makes no difference. You guys understand and have done this before. We have to multiply through all 3. You'd get m a squared over zx minus, this is like z over 1, the mz over z. That's kind of a bad example because really we'd cancel those out. Sorry about that. And bm over z squared. So we can have 3 terms is the point here. Second half of the lesson, honestly, we've covered this already. We've said so many times in algebra it's about the rules. Look at the numbers here. We've got 4s and 2s, and we've got negative symbols. The math is never hard. It's just a matter of the rules. So let's take a look at each of these. We've covered this before. 4 squared simply means 4 times 4. The answer is 16. 4 squared is 16. 4 to the negative 2nd, we cannot do anything with negative exponents. We have to make them positive if we're trying to apply them to a number. Now if we had a to the negative 2nd, there are some things we can do with it, canceling it out with, for example, times a squared. Then we can do something with it. But in this case, we've got a number here. We need to make this exponent positive. And the way that we do that is we move it to the denominator. So that's our first step. Once it's positive, we can just multiply it out. 4 times 4 is 16. So 4 to the negative second is 1/16. 4 to the second is 16. 4 to the negative second is 1/16. The opposite of 4 squared. Well, we already said 4 squared was 16. So the opposite of that is negative 16. That's what this means. This means the opposite of 4 squared. 4 squared is 4 times 4. This is not saying negative 4 times negative 4. This is not saying, if it were going to say negative 4 times negative 4, it would look like this. We'd have a set of parentheses around there indicating that it's the number negative 4 squared. It's not saying that. It's saying 4 is squared, and what's the opposite of that? Therefore, the opposite of 4 squared is negative 16. Here is negative 4 squared. This is saying negative 4 times negative 4. The parentheses are around the negative symbol. This is the value that's getting squared. A negative times a negative is a positive. So the opposite of 4 squared is 16. It really, you could almost just read them with different emphases. The opposite of 4 squared is different than the opposite of 4 squared. Last examples here. Again, the opposite of 4 to the negative second. Well, we said up here 4 to the negative second is going to be 1/16. 4 to the negative second is 1/16. So in E, we're saying what's the opposite of that? We know it's going to be negative 1/16. But let's just kind of show how it works. This is saying the opposite of 4 to the negative second. So the opposite of, I need to make this exponent positive. 1 over 4 squared. And that's how we end up with negative 1/16. Which is different than the opposite of 4 to the negative second. We can't do anything with negatives. We've got to make it positive. So the opposite of 4 squared in the denominator is the same as the opposite of 4 to the negative second. So negative 4 is being squared. 1/16. So it's about the rules. The math is never hard. It's about the rules.